Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to today's Blueforce Scheduling webinar, led by yours truly, Christian Contreras. And we're going to be going through the Blueforce Scheduling module on our session today. So if you've attended our prior sessions, it's going to be kind of a repeat of the Blueforce Scheduling, but a couple of things as we go through here and get started. First off, as we always do in our webinars, all attendees are muted. So please ask any questions you may have during the session via the GoToWebinar question area of the control panel, and I'll address them at the appropriate time during our conversation. Now, one thing you may have noticed also on your control panel, you do have a handouts section. In that section, there is a handout right now currently sitting there called Blueforce Scheduling. That is essentially a copy of today's slides that I'll be using, and those slides can actually serve as your documentation, as your step-by-step process of going through the scheduling module on your own. Now, as we go through today, I've broken up the course into a couple different topics. First topic was just going in there and discussing the whole entire process, just so you understand how the Blueforce scheduling process works. Then we're going to go in and actually go into basic scheduling and setting up your schedules as templates. So one of the things as we go through here is to understand Blueforce scheduling, everything is based on a template. So we're going to create a new schedule as a template. Then we're going to ensure that template is set to copy weekly, in which the system automatically does that for you. So there's nothing you have to go back in there and do once you have it set correctly. And then we're going to talk about assigning employees to open schedules. So we're going to go through all those steps, and then we're going to wrap it up with a quick discussion on ongoing maintenance and how to go back and edit the editing of scheduling the schedule templates. Now, one big thing that I'll keep saying over and over and over on this call is that the templates are the basis of the scheduling system. And I'll also keep reinforcing the fact that the ISS scheduling process is a custom process that we do here within ISS only. So by me saying that is that normal EPAY customers do not follow a lot of the same steps we do here when it comes to the scheduling module. So when you talk to EPAY support, they may act and look at you a little funny. But regardless, we'll go through those little pieces specifically. And I think that's kind of where the root of some of the questions and concerns that we've had in the field rest. So we'll go through these topics, and it's going to be a very informal session. So if there are questions, please do ask them via that control panel question area. So let's get started with our first topic here, and that's basically discussing the ISS Blueforce scheduling process. So the whole process can be broken up into four what I call easy steps. And after we go through this, you're going to find that this is actually a pretty easy process to do. The first step is to create that schedule template. So as I mentioned, the schedule template is really your basis of what you want the schedule to reflect. The template is going to be where you're going to go in and make edits, changes, any adjustments you can think of will be done at the template level. Now, once we have a template created, steps 1 and 2 are kind of all in the same save process. So you can't do one. You can't really save anything until you do number 2. Option number 2 here, it talks about defining scheduling slots. So creating a schedule template, we're essentially going to go in there, create the framework of our template, which is basically naming the template, put a few settings on it, and then we're going to go into doing the define scheduling slots section, where we now tell the system how many employees we need working on a specific shift in regards to a specific task. So in that particular example is we're going to go in the system and tell Blueforce we have a 7 a.m. to 4 p.m. shift on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday only, and we need 2 day porters to work Monday, Wednesday, and Friday at that particular 7 to 4 shift. And that's really all step 2 encompasses. So at that point, we're physically telling the system we have this shift, we have this shift working on this particular days, with this particular task, and we need X amount number of employees. Now, after we do that, we're going to go to step 3, and as you'll see here in the slide, step 3 is an optional step at the current time, but a lot of you are going to want to do this. And step 3 basically means you now go to assign named employees to those open slots we just created in step 2. So if we tell the system we have 2 day porters working on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, in step 3 here we can tell the system we want Joe Smith and Bob Jones are the 2 employees that we're going to want working those specific slots. So we actually have named employees now in the schedule. Now there's some benefits to that I'll go through. One of the big benefits is you can actually print out a schedule, a paper schedule, and post it at the side. You can actually do some other cool things with the system. We'll talk about that in a whole detailed section when we get to step 3. And then lastly, step 4 is a critical one. Once we've got this template in place, we're going to actually do step 4, which now means we've got to publish our first schedule. So the first schedule, we actually have to go in there and tell the system I want to publish it. Basically, push it down the hill and let the ball keep rolling. That's kind of what we need to do here. So step 4, we basically kick it into gear, and Blueforce takes over by now copying your template week to week to week every Friday. So the way it works, every Friday, I say end of business Friday just so everyone knows when they go home Friday, everything should be in place. What really happens is early in the week, hour mornings of Saturday morning, the templates start copying over for the next pay week. So you'll always know a week in advance what exactly your schedules look like. And if anything needs to be tweaked, you do it from the template. So that way, the next Saturday early morning, it automatically picks up those changes and applies it accordingly. Now, it is important as we go through in this process of scheduling is that the schedule is going to dictate a lot of those other reports that you've been receiving. So all submitters submitters and managers receive a report every day, which is like a daily labor recap that basically tells you have X amount of hours on actual hours worked versus your actual scheduled hours. And the scheduled hours are pulling out of this process that we're going through today. So it's very imperative that we get the information in the system correctly. So we'll talk about that a little more as we go further on in our discussion today. Then lastly, the last point, once again, as I mentioned a little while ago, please note that the ISS scheduling process that we're about to go through is a custom process, and we're not like the typical EPAY customer. We're actually going a little above and beyond the scheduling module than their base customers are. So as we go through these steps, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through a couple slides, explain the process to you, and then we're going to actually go in. I'm going to log into Blueforce, share my screen with you, and you'll be able to go through and see me actually create a schedule following the steps. And as I mentioned, for those that have just been joining us, on your control panel, you should have a little handouts section in which you can actually download that handout. And if you don't have it, what I'll do is if you can't locate it or having difficulties downloading it, I will provide that handout to everyone in an email following today's call. All right, so let's get in there. Let's get started with Blueforce scheduling. So our first step, as I show there, the 4 easy steps, the first step is called creating a schedule template. So the first thing we're going to do is we're actually going to log in, obviously, to Blueforce. When we get into Blueforce, we're going to look for a desktop icon there called Shift and Schedule. So it looks like a little calendar. In this case, it's pictured right here in the top right-hand corner of my screen. And what we're going to do with that little icon is we're actually going to click on it. It's going to take us straight into the Shifts and Schedules module of Blueforce, in which now we're going to go in there and select a site. And what that basically means is we go in and select a job that we want to work with. And then from that, we're actually going to go in and click the little Add New button that's on the screen. So as you go through this slide, and like I said, if you go ahead and download it and follow along, the red circles all throughout are the actual steps correlated into the numbers on the left-hand side of the slide. So step 1, we'll pick the job. Step 2, we're going to actually just click on Add New Schedule. Now, I think one of the confusing parts about this is nowhere on the initial screen does it say template. You only see the word schedule, and I think I want to kind of help everyone with this is when you click on Add New Schedule, you're going to go to the third step, in which you have to put in a schedule name. And once again, the word schedule is still there. And that's where we're just going to name the template. Essentially, what do you want to call it? What I typically tell everyone is keep it simple and make it mean something that you're going to be able to relate to later. If it's called, in my case here, my example on the screen, if my job was called Alamo Cafe, which is showing here, I'm going to point to the green arrow with the green arrow. Simply just go in the schedule name field and just call it Alamo Cafe. There's nothing fancy. The system is actually going to drop in the current period that you're in, the current work week you're in, as kind of the naming convention, but you don't need to keep that. You can adjust that name any way you like. But at least I would recommend you name it after your job name at least, so you know it means something to you and anybody else to come down the road later to look at your schedules. Now, the part that makes this a template now is step 4. In step 4, you have an option here where you can say mark as a template. Now, many of you on the phone call, and this guy I'm seeing that name is a big group out there, encounter issues where your template you just can't create a template. You can't figure out why. And this is actually the little magic trick to it. Check in here, mark it as a template. If you do not mark it as a template, the system will treat it as a normal schedule. And when you go through this process, it's going to publish as a normal schedule and basically make that active for the week. Now, what happens when the week ends? Well, you're most likely dead in the water, like they say, because the system's not going to know to automatically just continue copying from week to week like I've been mentioning. So it's important, and I'll stress it again as we go through and create this live here in a live demo. We're going to have to mark it as a template to make it work. Now, at the very bottom, I just also put as part of step 1, you will not actually go through and actually click Save Changes here because it won't let you. And one of the reasons it won't let you is because it needs a little bit more information, which will now lead us into our step 2. So let me go ahead and clear my arrow, and let's go on to step 2. So after we go through and just do some of the basic framework of our schedule, we're going to go into step 2 now and define our scheduling slots. And after this slide, I'm going to stop here and we'll actually do a little demo so you can actually see how to put this all together. So in step 2 here, we're going to go there and click Add New Link. And on the Add New, you see there's a little line with Add New. You just click on that. That's going to now give us an option now to actually go in and select our shift, select our task type, and a task as needed. And all we're doing now is essentially, if you look at the screenshot, we're actually building what we want the system to see and expect from an employee working this job. So my example here is I have this kind of a default kind of generic shift here. So mine's kind of a wide open shift, but I'm telling the system that I need, I have a landscape task in which I need a crew member working Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday, which is step 3. Now we're telling the number of employees needed each day of the week. So when we're actually defining scheduling slots, like I said, it's nothing more than telling the system I have this particular shift requiring this particular task, and how many employees do we need working that combination on what days of the week. Now, as you go through here, you have Saturday through Friday. It's only 1 week at a time. Keep in mind, if we do this process correctly, the system's going to take our numbers and basically replicate them week to week to week going forward in the future. So just keep that in mind as you go through. You don't have to build this for every week. You just have to do it one time in the template, inside the template, and then the system will take on from there and copy as needed from week to week. Then lastly, we're going to go ahead and click Save Changes finally, because now Save Changes obviously will save our work. If we do not save our work at this step, obviously, as you see down here at the bottom right-hand side, if we don't get the little confirmation that says save successfully, we're going to have to go back and do some work again. We're going to have to go back and redo everything we just did. So never leave the screen without clicking Save Changes and seeing that little message that says save successfully. Now, what we did, step 1 and step 2, I kind of went through real quickly. I'm going to go through a little slower when we actually build this template next. Those two are basically the bread and butter of the scheduling system. If we can get past step 1 and 2, step 3 is optional, and step 4 is really just the last step to publish. But step 1 and 2 is really, like I said, the bread and butter of the whole scheduling module in Blueforce. So let's do this. Let me go ahead and stop here. Let me open up my Internet Explorer, and we're going to now go in and create a schedule. All right, so Internet Explorer is open, and my login window is ready to go. So I'm going to be using a kind of a demo login user ID today. I just call it webinar, in which I will just go through demoing as a submitter role. So this is built around a submitter role, but the approvers, and we'll also see the same basic views on this particular screen. So as I log in here, you'll notice there on the opening window here, there's a couple different icons. And as I tell everyone, if I go in right now and go straight to shifts and schedules, okay, right here at the bottom left, if I go straight to shifts and schedules, what's going to happen is the first thing the system's going to prompt me for is what jobs do I want to work with. So with any module you go into in Blueforce, when you click on it, the first thing the system's going to want to know is what jobs do you want to work with. So basically, if you read the little box at the very top that I'm circling here in green, it's going to ask you, basically tell you, you pick the jobs you want to work with, and then Blueforce will follow along using just those jobs. So keep with that in mind, I can come down to the bottom of the screen and I can start seeing all of these jobs that I have access to seeing. Now for everyone on this phone call, everyone will see some variation of this, and I'll circle these as I go through here. You will notice that a lot of these jobs at the very beginning of my list have a little plus sign. And I bring this up because these plus signs are very important in that the plus signs mean that selection is a grouping of jobs. So a lot of these that say 1- on them are some that we've created in-house because they're for our clock groups that we have for our Walter devices out there, or maybe there are special security groups we've created to kind of get a mix of jobs. So those plus signs are just groupings. So if you ever see that, don't panic. They're just saying it's just a grouping of jobs. Now underneath that, let me erase these circles. If I scroll down just a tad, I may get down to where my districts are located, and I want to bring this up as well, just kind of a good side note for everybody to kind of understand, and hopefully it'll assist them. You get down to where you can see your actual districts. On my cases here, I have a bunch of districts at the bottom of my grid here that I have for Company 104, which is Houston. Under there, they have little plus signs as well. But these are a little different in that these groupings that are created here are groupings of jobs for the district. So I want to bring this up because you may actually see two jobs side by side that may be 10401. In this case, I don't have that example up here. But you have two jobs that are side by side that have the same number, 10401. One of them, if you look to the right, has that little circle with the plus sign, which is the grouping of jobs, which is a district grouping. And the other one may not have anything at all next to it. It may just be just a name. Well, if it's just a name with no plus sign, that, just so you know, means it's actually a physical job number. So a 10401 with no plus sign is just a regular job number. The one with a plus sign is the district grouping of all the jobs. So I bring this up because if you pick one of the groupings, that basically will select all of the jobs. Like if I pick just this one, it'll pick all the jobs underneath that 10401 grouping. So I don't want to go off too far off track on that. I just want to make sure everyone understands the good avenue to kind of explain that, just so you know that the plus signs are just groupings when you come into the screen. Now for this example, I'm going to actually pick one of the groups I set up for this group discussion. And then once you pick your groups or your jobs that you want to work with, it'll automatically take you to the shifts and schedules screen. This shifts and schedule screen will do a couple different things for you. One thing I will stress to everyone right off the get-go is to look at the from date and to date fields that are located at the very top of this grid. And let me put them in this little square around them. Those two dates are going to dictate what you see in the grid down here below. Now, if I say I only want to see items between 125 and 131, it's going to show you any item that has that date, those dates within its range. And that range is really what's referred to as the effective period on the grid below. So under the grid below there, all these items here have one of these dates within that effective period. So what you're saying, and the grid here is more of informational, it's really not giving you or doing anything for you. This grid allows you to see essentially all of the schedules, templates, schedules or schedule templates that are created out there for you. And I'll always let you know what the status of those items are. So right now I have 4 schedules that are all in a published state. So when I come up here, I can quickly say that these schedules for that essential period or corresponding period, I have X amount of resources and I have X amount of hours for that particular schedule. This is an informational grid, so like I said, don't panic or anything when you see it because you're like, oh my gosh, I have 959 hours on this particular job. I'm way over my budgeted hours. Well, take a step back here and we'll calm down when we look at this, because this screen, what it does here, it's really just giving you a total of hours that have been used for that particular period. So this is more informational. So let's just take one step back again. So let's look here and let's create a schedule template. So when we come to this screen, the first thing we're going to do is we're going to go down here into the selected jobs area, or all selected jobs, and hit the drop down and pick a specific job we want to work with. Now, if I hit the drop down here and I see right now that I only have 5 jobs selected or available to me, that is why, the reason for that is because we've actually told the system I only want to use these 5 jobs. We did that from the first screen when we were asked what jobs we want to use. If you're missing a job off the list, or I would recommend you go back to the job icon at the very top here, or you can actually, and let me just erase my drawings, you can actually come right here and hit select again on the left-hand side, left-hand column, and select the job you want to work with. Now, if you still can't find that job you really want to work with, the problem there is because it's more likely you don't have access to that job. So just keep that in mind. A couple things in there. Always make sure you pick the jobs you want to work with initially before proceeding into the scheduling module. Makes the life a little easier. Now, once I have those jobs selected, I can now pick the one I want to work with right now, and you can only work with one at a time when you create the schedule template. So let's say I want to go and create one for Alamo Cafe. Okay, Alamo Cafe is my job that I'm working with. The date range makes no relevance right now when you create a template, because this date range is just referring to the view underneath in the grid. The status basically allows you to see all the statuses. You don't need any of that. Once again, it's informational purposes. We don't need that as far as this step goes. All we need to do now is come over here to add new schedule and actually click on add new schedule. Now when I click on add new schedule, I'm going to be quickly prompted with a couple things that I need to go through and make sure I don't forget to go through as far as my steps go. So if you have that document in front of you, you will know that step 1 and step 2 were what we just did. Step 3 now is now to go in and actually look at the schedule name and adjust it accordingly. So notice all this junk it puts to the right of the name of my schedule. Now you can leave it there. That's not going to hurt anything. If you forget that step, not a big deal. But as I mentioned, you want to make a unique schedule name. So if I go in here right now to create my template and I call it Alamo Cafe, that's perfectly fine. But if I go down later down the road and I say, you know what, I want to create a whole new template, which I'll talk about at the end of the session, towards the end of the session. If I ever want to create a new template, I can't call it the same thing, because if I call it Alamo Cafe, which I already did, I have an Alamo Cafe in the system, it's going to tell me I can't use it. It's got to be a unique name. So that is the main reason why the system pops in the current pay week there at the very end. Some of you have actually reached out to me and said, you know what, it's 2016, can I create a new template? Sure, you can. However, you don't need to do that. And I'll explain that. For my example here, I'm going to call it 2016 because I have to create it, make it a unique name when I create a template. And then the last thing I have to do as part of our big step 1 is our 4th step, which now we're going to go in here and click on Mark as Template. Now, I don't know if you notice the screen, how it changed on us. If I'm going to uncheck it again, and notice what's different. Underneath the Mark as Template, you have a little green circle. That green circle is going to say Published. And what that's telling you is, as I go through and create this template, if I don't mark it as a template, it's going to publish it as a regular schedule, which is not what we want to do. So one of the questions I always get when we go through this process is I click on Mark as Template, and then the question I get is, is why is it red? I want it green, don't I? No. For a template, we never publish a template. The template is going to be really a kind of a fluid process where you can actually go in and out to the template, make changes to it, go in there and, like I said, make your changes from week to week, your edits if you need to. Some jobs may require 5 people every day this week. Next week, we're going to go down to 4 people a week. 3 weeks later, we may go up to 10 people a week, 10 people a day, sorry. So when you click Mark as Template, it is perfectly fine to have a red circle on your screen. So right what we've done, those 4 steps, those 4 little things we've done, encompasses the big 1 step of creating a schedule template. Now, going on to step 2, defining the scheduling slots, we're actually going to go down to the bottom of the screen here. And down here at the bottom, you're going to have an option to add row. Sorry, add new. All right, so when I click on add new, the system is actually going to provide me an area in this grid down below for me to now to go in and populate my required positions for my template. Now, once again, this is a template because right above here, we've actually told the system to mark it as a template. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and erase my drawings here. And I'm going to go back in. I'm going to click on Add New this time, which is our step 2 of our slide, step 2 slide. And the first part of that is Add New. And after I click on Add New, notice now that I have the ability now to go in and tell the system what shift someone is working, what task someone is working, and then what days of the week. So maybe I need someone on Monday, I need someone on Tuesday, I need someone on Wednesday. Okay? As you go through this, at the very far right-hand side of this screen, you have a total hours and slot number available for you. So the system is also automatically kind of generating total hours and how many positions are needed as you go through this. So that way you can kind of do your apples to apples comparison from what you have on paper there at your office versus what you put in the system to make sure you are doing it correctly and everything's coming out as you like. All right, so the first thing that comes up, let me erase these again. First thing that comes up is the shift. Well, if I hit the drop down, I have a couple different shifts set up in the system. Now, everyone on this phone call has access to see all the shifts that are available for this job. But the question I always get, and someone just beat me, always get around this time, is that how do those shifts get in the system? You know, where did 00 to 2359 come from? Or I don't have an 11 to 2 split 2 shift. Where's that coming from? Well, all these shifts can be easily created right above with a little link called Add Shift. But all the shifts that are in there, a lot of these came from our initial import of schedules, which occurred a little over a year ago. Towards the end of 2014 was when we actually did our first venture, our first pass at schedules. But keep in mind, any schedule you see on here, it's informational. It's not really doing much, but I will say something to the schedules where they impact or really become important to get the right schedule if you're actually going to slot someone, a named individual, to that shift in step 3. So I'll come back and I'll talk about that a little bit more at that time. But as we go through here and build for step 2 here, as we go in here to create that schedule, we go through the drop down here, pick the right shift that we want to work with. So let's just pick the first one here. I'm going to say there's a 8 to 2 shift, so 8 to 1400. And then I can just come over. Typically, in most cases here, for my example here, I'm gonna have to do a little different. But everyone on the phone call, you really can skip out on task type. Task type for everyone who is in the has a cleaning job, which is one of our base janitorial jobs. You're going to be able to go here and see cleaning automatically default for you. If you're in a landscaping job, you're going to see landscaping here. If you're in security from like the UniGuard division, you're going to see security as a task type, and so forth. A few of your jobs are engineering jobs, and I'm just looking at a couple of the users that are out there, so kind of trying to get the mix out here. But engineering jobs will have an engineering task type. The IFS division will kind of be of a mix because you may have some cleaning, you may have some engineering, you may have some other things kind of mixed up together. But regardless, your task type should always default for you. And if it doesn't, you go hit the drop down and pick it. From that, the tasks are now available for that job will now pop up. So in this case, I have 4 tasks, all cleaning tasks, that are available for this particular job. Once again, some of you may be thinking, well, I don't see Porter on your list. Well, because Porter is not a task that's available for my Alma Cafe job. So as you go through this, don't fret, don't worry if you're not seeing your task on here, because we have specific tasks that our finance team has gone through and said dictated should be on what jobs. And we can always go back and add tasks to a job if need be, but we'll get there down the road if we ever need to. We'll cross that path. But for the sake of this example, we can go hit the drop down, pick the task that corresponds to the shift that I'm about to create we're about to define scheduling slots for. So I'm going to pick custodian, because custodian is the popular one. So what I've done so far, just before I go any further, is I told the system I have a shift that's 8 to 2, and it entails a custodian task. And now I'm going to go in here and tell the system on these days of the week, I need X amount of employees to work that particular shift task combination. So in this case now I'm going to go over into, let's say Saturday and Sunday we don't have anybody working, but on Monday I need 2 custodians working that day. Tuesday I need 3. Wednesday I need 3. Thursday I need 3. And then on Friday I need just 2. On the weekend, we don't have anybody, so Saturday and Sunday is going to be blank. Now, as you go through here, you'll notice a couple things. You will notice that the days of the week, let me circle one of them, like Saturday, it does tell you it's SAT for Saturday, but it has the 23rd there. You're thinking, well, what is the 23rd? 23rd is this past Saturday. What's going on? Well, the 23rd, and every day you'll notice there's the 24th on Sunday, the 25th on Monday, and so forth. Those numbers are just guides for you. They're not going to dictate that on that day you have to have had somebody already work, because maybe this job hasn't started for you yet, and that's perfectly fine. So I always tell everyone, ignore those numbers. They're just as a guide to help you kind of correspond a calendar date to a day of the week for the current period you're in. Now, at the very end of the screen, at the very far right, like I mentioned, in a little bit, once I go through and hit save, this little section is going to populate for us. What the system will do for total hours is going to go in and say, all right, on Monday you have two custodians working 8 to 2. That should be 12 hours. On Tuesday you had 18 hours. On Wednesday you had 18 hours, and so forth, and give you a grand total for the week and the number of positions required for that week. So that number right there becomes important, because that's what a lot of those reports that you're seeing on a weekly basis or even daily basis are being based off of. So once again, defining a scheduling slot is nothing more than telling the system I have this shift working this task, and then how many people each day do I need to cover the slots for that week. All right, so what I'm going to do now is I'm finally ready to go over here and hit Save Changes. So down here at the bottom left-hand corner, I have Save Changes. Once I go in and save the changes, the system will now not only save my work, so as I mentioned, once I hit Save Changes, I better see that little message on the screen that says Save Successfully, which is right here at the bottom left-hand side of the screen. And once I go here and see that message, I'm good to go. You notice over here on the far right-hand side also, the system tells me that for that week, I have told the system I need 13 positions. That's what's in parentheses right now, 13 slots, for a total of 48 hours working that shift and task combination. Once I hit save there, I'm actually done, but maybe I'm not done. Maybe I have to add more positions. Not a big deal. Step 2, steps, once again, just click on Add New. Once I go through and click Add New one more time, it's now going to give me another line for me to build another shift task combination. Now, once again, it could be the same shift time, but maybe it's a different task this time. So maybe from 8 to 4, I have the same shift, but this time I have a cleaning supervisor I need to worry about. So I'll go to cleaning supervisor, and we'll say I have one supervisor working that same shift to work alongside all these employees. Once again, save changes, and look at, lo and behold, you'll notice I have 30 hours for that cleaning supervisor for that week, 5 slots required. Now the slots are just telling you total slots. Doesn't mean you have 5 different people working that slot. It's just telling you that you have 5 positions, or 5 days in this case, that were needed for cleaning supervisor. All right. So as we go through here, you will continue to go in here, add new, add another line, and so forth to build your full schedule. Now there is no limit to how many lines of schedules you can have. I think out there the greatest number is probably around 80 some odd lines. We've actually built some that are greater than 100 at kind of from a testing standpoint when we first started scheduling. Had no issues, just took a time to get there, but it is no issues on how many lines of positions you need here, or slots you need to define here in your schedule template. Now once you save your changes, the next step, and before we go there, it's step 3, which is called an assign employees. What I'm going to do here is I'm going to go back out of here. I'm going to go in and just go back to the home screen, and we're going to pick back up from here momentarily. So let's go back to our slides, and on step 3 here is now assign employees to an open slot. So what that says now, we've already told Blueforce we have so many positions available on given days of the week. But now step 3 has been an optional step. Many of you may want to go in there and actually tell the system I have a certain employee working that particular slot that I created. So what we're going to do in here in a little bit is we're going to go back to that same area where we create the schedule slots, define those schedule slots, sorry, and we're going to go in here now and click Assign. When we click Assign, we have the opportunity now to assign an employee to one of the open slots that we created. So keeping that in mind, we now have the ability now to tell the system, I should see down here in step 2, when I go to that open slot, assign a specific employee that is available to work that particular slot. Now, when I mention available to work that particular slot, 2 things are important to keep in mind here. First thing, does that employee have this particular job? In this case, in my example here, I have Mr. Acosta here. Acosta's an employee highlighted here in yellow. The question would be, does that employee have this job as part of his working jobs in Blueforce on his employee record? If the employee does not have that as this particular job that I'm working on, as his working job, you will not see his name on the list. So keep that in mind. That's the first thing you got to keep in the back of your mind. The second option here is, does this employee or is this employee available to work for you in the system? Meaning, on the employee record, one of the functions that's available out there is called block calendar. We can actually tell the system, do not schedule this employee on these particular days at all. Well, when the system comes in here, and when you come into Blueforce and you try to schedule someone on a Monday, if he's blocked out of that calendar on the employee profile as well, it's no go. You can't schedule him to this particular job. So I'm going to bring those 2 points up here momentarily. I'll actually go into Blueforce, into the employee record, and show you these 2 pieces here when I go back to our live demo. So step 2, you pick the employee, and lastly, you're going to go through and say Save Changes. Once you click Save Changes, once again, make sure you get that little message that you successfully did that, and then kind of proceed from there. Now, one of the reasons why this is optional is because of the little note down here at the bottom of the window. I want everyone to kind of read down that whole message to yourself as I explain it, because it becomes very important that you kind of understand what could happen or what could change if we start assigning people to shifts within a schedule. Now, every employee has a default assigned shift on his or her employee record. That's just a default setting, default setup in the system. Assign them to a scheduled slot, like I'm talking about in step 3 here. We'll assign them to that new shift, and any associated rules to that new shift they're assigned to will now go into effect. So what that says, if I go in and assign someone to this 00 to 2359, this kind of wide open blanket shift that's out there, and they were actually on their employee record assigned to a 7 to 5 shift, and on that 7 to 5 shift, you called Tiandra or myself and said, you know what, I need lunch rules on that 7 to 5 shift, but we didn't apply them to this other shift, the 12 to 2359 shift. What's going to happen is the employee now is assigned to the new shift. That new shift has no lunch rules, so that in turn means that there won't be any lunch rules applied, because the system says you told me to apply this new rules based on the shift that employee is now working on the schedule. This affects lunches, could affect pay differentials, could affect any rules like minimum hours work rules we have set up in the system, and so forth. So just keep that in mind. All those rules are driven by the shift. So I just bring that up. I encourage you to go in here and assign your employees to the different shifts. However, I want you to keep in mind that some of those rules that you already have in play can get affected if we make a lot of changes and moving people around without checking those rules first. Now, moving on, assigning employees to open slots. So essentially what's going to happen is you're going to have the ability now to see from the employee schedule tab that's in the Blueforce scheduling module. You can go through and see and filter by employee, task, or shift, and actually kind of look at the screen here and kind of see where employee is scheduled. For example, here, Sam Crew, the first employee on the list, is scheduled to work a specific shift on Sunday through Friday, with off on Saturday. Now, this particular view allows you to actually print it out, provide for the employees, print it out, pass it out, pin it up, whatever it may be, maybe just for your own reference. But you have that information available on this particular screen. I'll go through that a little bit real quick so you can see what that's going to do. You also, part of step 3 of scheduling an employee, gives you some other opportunities in which now you can edit schedules straight from that employee view. So if you see someone, like for example on the screen here, under step 2, 3, 4, 5, and so forth, you can actually go and knock out people out of schedule straight from their employee view. Now, this is probably a little more advanced for those who want to use step 3, but I'll go through it briefly as well, just so you can go through and see how I can do everything from that particular view. And then also you can assign employees to the open slots when that availability calendar is available to you now as well. So real quick, you'll be able to the system will be able to tell you who's available, who's not available. Now, I know one of our couple of our offices are using this screen because they like to move people around, or they have floaters that fill in for other people on certain days. This works out perfectly because now you can see who's scheduled and who's available. So in a nutshell, that's step 3. Step 3 is just a step where you go in now and have the opportunity to assign an employee to one of those shift slots or schedule slots that we created a little while ago. Once again, step 3 is an optional step. ISS is not requiring you to do this. It's just it's added benefit if you want to take advantage of some of the other functionality that's in the system. So let's go back into our Blueforce module, a shifts and schedules module. And I purposely went back to the home screen because once you go back in, I want to show you how to pull up that particular schedule template that we already created. Now, if you go through here, you'll notice a couple of things are different. One of the things you're going to notice on the screen and the grid down below is that the color looks to be different on the status and on the schedule name for the template that we just created. So one thing you'll notice that in red here, although it says schedule name here, That red dictates that it's a template. And you'll also notice the name, at the end of the name, there's a little T. So the red is basically telling you it's a template. You'll also notice that under status, it shows that it's a template as well. So it's not colored in, it's just black and, sorry, it's more of a gray and white circle, and it's telling you that it's a template only. So right there, you'll know that the templates are treated a little differently and separated from all of the other published schedules. So right off the bat, you can see what schedule templates you've created. Now the question I always get here also is, I've got all these templates that I've created over the last several months, but I don't see them on my grid here. Did I lose them? What happened to them? Did Blueforce lose them? Can you help me with it? What happens at this point? Keep in mind, this grid is informational and is based on that from and to date. So if I created a template 2 months ago, what I would probably want to do is go to that particular from and to date field and go through and change the dates to accommodate for that date range that I actually created that template. Now, unfortunately, I can't go back in there and say, show me everything from 2013 all the way to today. I can't do that. The most the system will let you do is 93 days. So basically 3 months worth of time is how far back you can go into the past to actually see on a grid at a time. So if you want to go build up a template to maybe edit it from something you did back in October of 2015, I would recommend just go back and pick maybe a month at a time, maybe October 2015 to 1st to the 31st, or maybe even to the 1st through maybe December 31st. That's 3 month range. But you can only do 3 months from range between the from and to date. So once I go back to the screen, I'm looking for that template. The template that I want to use is a template that is on the screen here. So all I'm going to do here is, let's see here. Just give me 1 second. I'm going to make sure I don't want to skip anybody. I just noticed there's a few more questions that's popped in. All right, so I've got a couple of questions here that I'm going to incorporate as I go through these steps of creating it in a live demo here. So now step 3 here, when I go into the template, once again, just click on that little red link for the name of the template. It's going to take me back to literally right where I left off. You can actually see all the information that's going on. Now, if this is a template that hasn't been touched in a couple months, not a big deal. Any change that I make to this template will now take effect come early Saturday morning. So you want to make sure that if you know a change is coming up, take care of it in advance. That way all the reports, everything you get from either generated from the system, or you go into Blueforce and pull up yourself, or maybe something your manager talks to you about. Regardless, if you know there's a change coming up to the number of positions you need at a job, take care of that, get it ahead of the game, get in the system and ready to roll. So that way this Blueforce automatically picks that up and runs with it. Okay? If you create a template and your hours never change, maybe you created it and you have five custodians on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, all working that 8 to 2 shift, and that's the life of the job, you're never going to need to ever see that again, so be it. Leave it alone. There's no reason to come back to the template to make any changes. Once you do step 4, which is to publish that schedule, the system will automatically continuously stay on that same routine of doing that 5, Monday through Friday, until either A, we lose that job and that job becomes deactivated in the system, or B, you come back in here and make changes to the template. So those are the only 2 things that will govern a change or would stop the process from not giving you 5 custodians each day in my example here. So, so by all means, leave that schedule alone if it is if no changes need to be done. Now, back to the template here. If I want to assign someone to a slot that I already have noted, so for example, I have all these cleaning supervisor spots, and I want to assign someone to those positions. Over the far left-hand side, I have an assign on that particular line. That assign now allows me to essentially go through, click on assign, and now go through and put my employees into that particular cleaning supervisor position. So I'm going to go ahead and click on assign. a grid comes up on my screen, in which now I have the opportunity now to tell the system that these are my open slots, and I want to now put someone in as a cleaning supervisor to work that particular shift. In most cases, informational. Obviously, it's going to help you. It's going to help the employee. It's going to help everyone. But most of the time, this is an informational step anyhow. So we're going to go through. We're going to go in here and actually click on where it says open. And when I click on where it says open, it's going to give me all the employees that are available to work that particular position. As I go through here, notice there's only 4 employees. And I'm going to say, you know what, I want to make myself, I'm actually the supervisor working that spot. So I'm going to go ahead and put my name in there. And I'm going to be the supervisor Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. And on Thursday and Friday, I'm going to have actually Jay is going to be the one that's actually the supervisor covering for me because I'm not going to be there. Okay. Now, notice that you also have Saturday and Sunday available on here, and they currently have X's on them. Well, those X's are telling the system that you've told, basically, the X's are telling you now that you've told the system that you don't want anybody working those days. That was based on your requirement, and it's hard to see, but underneath there in the kind of the background here, you can kind of see back here in the back that you put zeros in that particular requirement. Not a big deal. If you're in here slotting people and you notice that, you know, wait a minute, I really need someone on Saturday. I really messed up here, and I really need someone this Saturday. So I can go in here on Saturday, hit the drop down, and say, oh, Jay's going to work for me. So you can override at any point. You can go back and make those edits or changes. And the scheduling module gives you a little leeway. You can actually go from the previous screen, or you can go in here as part of the slotting process to actually correct that. Now, if I leave this alone and just say, you know what, I want to go ahead and put Jay in this position, hit Save Changes, what's going to happen for me is you're going to first off see the Save Successfully on your screen, which is a good thing, and then you're going to hit Close to close that window. Since I added Jay into a Saturday slot that was not originally requested, you will notice now that we have in our original entry area, our planning and allocation tab, it's going to show us that one slot with a 0 right next to it. Now, if you will notice that the second line that we haven't touched yet has the number twice. You'll see a 2-2, a 3-3, a 3-3, and a 2-2. But the first ones only have a 1 and a 0. So what's going on? Well, that first digit is telling you how many positions are needed or requested by you, obviously, or you're required to work this position. The second number is in parentheses is telling me how many open slots do I have. So if you go through here and see a 2-2, a 3-3, or so forth, that's just telling you that you have 3 positions, 3 open slots, meaning you haven't slotted anybody into that position. So same thing with the next line. When I go in and click on Assign on the next line, I can now go in and there we go, click Assign, sorry. And then now when the grid comes up, I can now go in and assign my custodians to those open slots. So look at the screen again. You'll see it'll tell you what days we told the system we needed certain slots. So you'll notice that on Monday I have 2 open slots because I only told it 2. On Friday only 2 as well. But Tuesday through Thursday I have 3 slots. So same as I did in the last step, I click on the opens. Once I click on the open, it'll now change, the view will change a little bit. It'll give me a drop down to which I can now pick the position or the individuals that I want to work on those days. So we're going to say Jane works every day this week, Monday through Friday. On the next employee, when I click on the next line, that employee is going to be Edward. Edward's going to work all of these days. And then so forth, the last position. I can now click on my last position here. And I don't have anybody else to pick from. So, you know, it's myself and Jay that are left. And Jay's a supervisor on Thursday and Friday, but he's going to be just a frontline employee on Tuesday and Wednesday. And I'll just say me and him will swap just for the sake of this example on Thursday. Now, if you don't have someone a slot, you don't have to force a name in there. You can always go back here and leave them open. So if I want to leave all these positions open, I can do that. Once I hit Save Changes, I get my message that says Save Successfully, then I hit Close. The screen now will update accordingly, and you'll notice that because I left those positions open, you will notice that on these days, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday, I have 3 required positions, but 1 is still in an open state, open slot. So that's how you assign an employee. It's a very simple process. It's just a matter of, do you want to do that much detail at this point? I urge you to try to do this. It would help, but I would not tell you to do that. I would discourage you from doing it on those jobs in which it's almost like a revolving door, where you have new employees working jobs all the time and turnover is high, because you'll be going in here and doing a lot of updates consistently. Now, if an employee gets terminated, they're obviously not going to be working their schedule, so you'll have to make sure you go back in there and adjust that accordingly. Otherwise, if there's no changes to your job, your same employees are working all the time, they're working the same shift information and tasks, system is still going to continue populating that in the schedule week to week to week until something changes at that job site. All right, so give me 1 second here. I'm going to go ahead and take this quick pause. I'm going to look at some of these questions and see if I've answered them, or I need to go back in and answer these. So give me 1 second. All right, so one of the questions says, I have an employee that has a specific task, it's a default task, and that employee default schedule right now is 000 to 2359, which a lot of employees did that because initially each job had to have a default shift on it, and to encompass that and make it easy, just to have a kind of a fictitious shift in there just to keep going, we entered a one that's called, this is simply labeled as 000 to 2359. It's kind of wide open shift. So that the question furthermore says that right now, the timesheet view, when they go there and they click the employee schedule, come back to the employee schedule, the custodian is what's showing up as their shift. So essentially what's happening is that person's been slotted to a shift that's been created in Blueforce Scheduling, and now that shift, whatever it may be, has to be updated with the same rules as the blanket shift, that the original default shift the employee was scheduled to. That way the same lunch rules can apply. So in this case, since lunches are not being taken out of the employee's new shift, what I would recommend the person who asked this question, I won't call you out on this call, put in a help desk ticket, and Tiana and I will get back to you on that and actually go through and make sure your other shifts are updated correctly with the right rules you need. And that's kind of what it is, just it's causing the issues. The rules are not applied correctly. Another question is, how do you remove someone from a shift? So just like I mentioned a while ago, if I go back in and go to that assign step, because I want to assign someone to a slot, if I ever go back in here and want to remove someone, or maybe just blank out all of my employees that are out there now, when I click on assign, I'm going to click on assign here, I can now simply just go in to that particular day, just click on that day that has an employee on it, and all I can do is now either change it back to open, or if I don't need that position anymore, just exit out, and that'll remove that employee's reference from that particular day. So maybe I want to go ahead and say I want to open all these up. I don't want anybody named on this particular supervisorship because I want to move people around maybe. Once it save changes, it'll update that. It'll actually, once I close this as well, it'll actually update on the previous grid with my numbers. You'll notice in here that now all of them show a 1 and 1, because now it says that I have 1 slot required and now it's an open slot. And since I actually X'd out on my Saturday slot here is also wide open. And it's actually 0. All right, so I have another question. It says, just a bit confused. If an employee is on the 3rd shift and moves to a 2nd shift, when the 2nd shift adds to the schedule, does that automatically take the employee off the 3rd shift, or is it a change? Is it a change or is this a change both shifts have to do? Well, once again, nothing's going to affect any rules in the system that are currently working for you unless you actually go and physically name that employee to a slot. Just by going in here and just putting the numbers of how many positions you need will not affect anything. Just by going in here and using different shifts will not affect anything. The minute that it will affect, or I'm going to say will, but it could possibly affect, is that when you go in there and assign someone to a named position. So the only thing I would recommend you do is making sure that all of your rules are set up for the shifts as you want them. Don't worry about the default shifts. Worry about the rules as you want them in here in the schedule, because if you're going to name everyone to a scheduled slot, each shift should have all the rules in place. So once again, just put in a help desk ticket. Tiandra and I can go through and help you with that. And we'll just go through and say, this is your first shift, right? This is the rules you want. You want a 30-minute lunch after 6 hours, and that's it. And on the second shift, you have this rule, but maybe on the second shift you have a pay differential we need to add to it. We'll go through and make those rules and make sure all that is in play correctly for you. So just, like I said, put a help desk ticket, and we can sit down with you and just on a phone call probably and make it quick and easy for all of us. All right, so that's step 3. We're done and almost done with creating our first template. Obviously, I'm going through doing a lot of talking, but once you go through here and do this, it shouldn't take you more than 2-3 minutes. It's a real quick process to create a schedule template. All right, last step. And the last step is step 4, in which now we're going to go through and publish your first schedule. So what we're going to do in this step is going to go through and create the first schedule manually. I think that's one of the things I want to stress. You did all this work. You have the schedule template in place. Now we have to basically just kick the ball down the hill and let it keep rolling and rolling and rolling and rolling. So we're going to go through and create the first schedule manually. We're going to publish it. This is going to activate the auto copy process in which Blueforce will come in here and replicate this every, I says Friday here, but it's really late. You can either look at it late Friday night or you can say early Saturday morning, either way. But the interface automatically will copy your information for you. Now, one of the steps you will see here in a little bit will say template with resources. What we're going to do is we're going to always select template with resources. What that does, it automatically copies the number of positions you need, plus all of the employees you've slotted to those slots from week-to-week basis. If something changes and and the schedule's already published and it's already out there, it's already active for that week, and you want to move people around, you can go into that schedule and make the adjustment as you need. And I can show you that here in a little bit. But the bottom line, keep your changes in your template. Your template is going to be kind of like I've had people refer to it as their cheat sheet. Their template being the Bible of everything, kind of their master schedules. I've heard that term as well. The template is where all that resides. So anything you need, anything that you want to kind of be the basis of all your schedules, it's the template. Now, one thing I'll show you here as part of step 4 is once this copy is going, every week, each schedule is being populated. That all remains there. So if you make a change, let's say you create a template, say in October, and that template's been active until January 1 where we added more business or more hours to a job, let's say. Starting January 1st, when you see all those schedules, because you made that change on the template, those schedules that publish after that would be different in the system, and you kind of have a history going on for you. So you'll be able to see kind of what you did, what was the schedule based on October versus what it was in January versus what's going to be here coming up in April. You have some history to go back on. So just keep that in mind as well. You have that in kind of your back pocket if you ever need to refer to that historical information. So kind of more also in step 4 here. Step 4, you now will go and publish the schedule. So we're going to go back in. We're going to go through the same steps again. We're going to go through and add a schedule like we did at the very beginning. But this time, we're going to do some different changes here. We're going to go into and I'll show you here the screen views. We're going to go in here and we're going to do something called auto extension. Last time we used Marcus template. This time, notice we're going to leave it alone. We're going to go through and say auto extension, which will basically make the system automatically extend that schedule from week to week to week for us. We're going to go through and tell the system what the source is. We're going to basically say go and pick the template to pick from to do that extension every week for us. We're going to make sure it's in a published state. And then once we'll do all that good stuff, the last thing is to come down to the very bottom and click on copy. Now that basically tells the system we pulls plans from this template with our resources, and it will automatically copy for us into this particular schedule. So instead of having us have to go through all the work and go back and recreate everything in this new schedule we're creating manually, we're just going to tell the system copy it in for us and drop it in and create that so we can move on forward. Now, once we're done there, we're going to go in and let me clear my circles there, sorry. Let me go through here now, and we're going to go through and tell the system what template we're going to copy from. We're always going to tell it only copy 1 week at a time. Because if we go in here and do the other option, which I'm not going to circle, I'm going to put a little arrow next to it, it's called remaining weeks, that actually will take this whole process and blow it up. Because we're telling the system now to copy it out for X amount of weeks. We want is just to copy the current week and let the system, or Blueforce, that interface has running, control the week-to-week copy for us. After that, we apply and close it. Once we do apply and close, the last thing we have to worry about is just keep in mind that each schedule will copy on, or each template will copy on a weekly basis on every Friday evening. Real easy process. I know there's a lot of screenshots on here. I'm going to go through these so we can make sure that everyone understands what to check to get it going. So before I go in there, I got a couple more questions. One of the questions I had is if you assign employees to specific shifts, do you have to assign the rules to each person? And no, the shifts basically will hold those rules for us. All depends on what rules they are. Typically, the most common one is lunch rules. That's why I talk about that all the time. But we can do specific rules based on that shift. So if you have that shift has a 30-minute lunch, whereas the third shift has an hour lunch, we could do that. But those rules are assigned at the shift level, not at the individual person level. And another question here, if you create a meal break rule after you create a shift schedule, will the meal break automatically apply to the previously created shift schedule? Yeah, so if I ever go back and you say you create this whole schedule and then you come back and to either Tiandra or myself and say, you know what, I need lunches applied on this particular shift. Once you go and add those lunches now take effect. We can actually even reprocess the timesheets that are out there and apply that rule back to the beginning of the current period. So to answer your question, yeah, we can do this after the fact as well. So anything you've done already that's working and everything's perfectly fine, but now you have to apply that rule, we can kind of do that kind of on a after the fact premise as well. So yeah, that definitely is possible. All right, so let me get out of here. I'm going to go back to my Blueforce screen. And what I will do here for everybody is I'm going to go back to the main grid. And kind of as we went through a little while ago, we came through this step. We assigned our changes here. The one thing I did not do, and I know I didn't do it just by looking at the screen, and yet you probably guessed it, I didn't save changes, so I'm going to save changes now. All right, so I'm going to go back to the home screen just so we're all on the same page. So for step 4, what we're going to do is go the same steps, pretty much same steps that we did initially to create a template. The only difference now is we're actually creating our first schedule. So we're actually manually creating our first schedule. So I'm going to go back into shift and schedules. I'm not going to worry about anything at the bottom of the screen. I'm going to go up here and simply pick the job that I want to create the first schedule for. Leave the date range alone, that's not a problem. And then go down back in here and now just say add new schedule. So when I go in here and add new schedule, now one of the things I will bring up before I go into it, because I don't want to cause any confusion, is let's say for example I already had Alamo Cafe published schedule down here showing on the screen. Or maybe I already have a schedule that's already been published that it's been working for weeks and weeks and weeks already. If I go in here and create a new published schedule for the first time, manually published schedule, the system will automatically go back and say, you know what, I can't have 2 of the same schedules. So I'm going to take the newest one and run with that, and I will unpublish the other one. So keep in mind, if I go in there and create a new manually published schedule, the old one is essentially inactivated. So keep that in mind because that could affect your day-to-day reports that are out there as well. But typically they don't, but I just want to bring that up, that old schedule no longer will exist. Whatever you tell it now here in this next step will now take precedence. All right, so I pick the job, and I say add new schedule. And now I have the ability now to do a couple things. First thing I want to do is look at the schedule name. Now the schedule name has to be unique. So once again, when you see the schedule name there, it's not a, nothing that you need to do here. I always say just leave it alone, because you always give you this little premise, the little start of the week to the end of the week date range that pops in there is a good starting point for you, so you can kind of see when you create this first schedule, when the schedule kicked off. So you can leave it alone, or you can choose to rename it, however you want to do that. But since you're doing schedules now, those have to be unique names as well. And then after that, the next thing you're going to want to do is simply come over here to auto extension and pick auto extension. That's a little checkbox. The auto extension basically now tells the system, take this first created schedule and automatically extend it for me. I don't want to have to deal with it anymore until I have to make changes. The source is the important one, because now you go through here, you'll see all these different options. Previous week, alternate week, you have a template with resources, one without resources, you name it. What we want to do, our goal here, is to look for the template that we just created. Mine was called Animal Cafe 2016. And I want to use that with resources always. Now the other options that are on here, I would say ignore them. They're not going to be anything that's going to help us to get through this process. Our source for the schedule should always be the template that we just created with resources. And the reason why I say with resources is because you want it to pull over those numbers every week. You want it also to pull over the named slots, those people that you've assigned those slots. If you're going to use that step 3 process, you want to bring those over. That way you don't have to go and populate that every week on your own. It gets old and very tedious to do. So have the system do it for you. Now once you've seen those two options on the screen, the next thing you have to worry about here is simply just making sure that the green dot on the middle of the screen is still showing published. And they don't want to do that. Hey, give me 1 second. There we go. All right. So that is the key thing. You want to make sure it says published. So what I'm going to do is just circle it for you. Now, once again, that circle is only geared if you actually were accidentally click on that mark as template as a part of the template step. That is what actually changes that color to red. So make sure, like I said, as a fifth step in this big old process, just make sure that you go through here and make sure it says published. Now, following that, the next step would be is to now come down here to the next section, which is fetch plans from template with resources. So this step here is this template. It's going to look up here to what source was. We told it the template is what we want. So it's going to go through, look for that template, and now when I click on copy, it's actually going to go through and copy that down and build our first schedule. So essentially what we did is we did all that work on that template a while ago to build those slots, build the actual employees that are assigned to those slots. But what the system's going to do in this one step by hitting copy, it's going to populate this down here for us. That way we don't have to go back and create those lines manually. So I'm going to go here and erase all my drawings. And go back here and click on copy. When I click on copy, the system's going to come up and say, all right, what template do you want to, just to confirm, what template do you want to copy from? So at this point, look for the template that you just created. In this case, I had created a template called Animal Cafe 2016. I had 18 resources with a total of 108 hours total in what I have told the system was my base template. Now, if that wasn't a template, obviously you can see I have other templates I've created for Animal Cafe on my webinars, so you have other options to pick from here, but Animal Cafe 2016 is the one we are working with today. And then all I'm going to do down here is at the very bottom is ensure that I only want current week only. I'm circling that because we do not need to change it. All we're doing is going there and looking to make sure that it indeed says current week. And then I'm going to hit apply. And when I hit apply, it's going to tell me that the template was copied to the required, the selected week successfully. Now, if I hit close here, the system is actually going to go gray real quick, but it's not going to update my view down here. So what I tell everyone typically is one of the things that it's okay. Um, you can now actually go through and get out and come back into that schedule just to verify that those lines are there. Now, rest assured that by getting that message down here at the bottom of the screen, it says save successfully, and it also says schedule is copied successfully. However, the employees whose qualification expires are not copied over. That message tells you that everything you've done is there, it's just not visible right now on the screen. One thing I'll bring up for you, just that little wording at the very bottom of the screen talking about qualifications. One of the things you can do on the employee record, and I'll show you the employee record here as we wrap up. One of the things on the employee record you can do is tell the system they're qualified for these particular tasks, positions, whatever it may be, or they've gone through these particular trainings. And if it expires, those qualifications don't come and carry over automatically here, but you at least have a tracking system there on the employee record that you can see when certain items or tests or certifications, whatever, expire. And that's on the employee record. And I'll go through that real quick in our last 13 minutes that we have here together today. So once you've done that step, I'm going to go ahead and hit back out of here. So back is right here, right to the next of Save Changes. Never hit back until you've actually saved changes and got that message down at the bottom of the screen. Otherwise, everything you just did is for naught. Now when I hit back, you'll notice on the screen that I have two that are listed as Alamo Cafe. One is a template. One is a scheduled, published schedule. So the published schedule now, the way this works is the system's going to say, all right, and let me clear my screen here, sorry. The first thing we did is we create that manually published schedule, and it has an effective period for this week. So what the system does is we told it to auto extend. The system on Friday late evening, early Saturday morning, it's going to go through and say, you know what, hey, look, the effective period of this one ended on 1/29. That means I need to go and take that template and extend it for another week. So then the Blueforce interface goes through, creates that new schedule for you in the system, and will automatically update that date to reflect the next period end date, which will be the next Friday, and so forth, through every week as going on into the future. Now, one thing you can always do, and I use these as examples here, so I always build some extras out here for you so we can actually go through and see them. You will notice that these have big date ranges in them. This one started back in May. This one started back in October. This one just started last 2 or 3 weeks ago. The beauty of this, and the little plus sign again comes into play because the plus sign is telling you that you have a grouping of schedules. So that means if I can go in here now, let me go ahead and erase my screen here. If I go into that U.S. Airways hangar job that I have and hit that link, you'll see that I see every schedule that was created for me. And I can go through here and see that this schedule really hasn't changed. Every schedule has 26 slots, and 26 open slots, or unassigned slots. So you can go through and see that that really hasn't changed. However, if I go through one of these other jobs, let me clear this, and let us click on this job now. This job, which is my main office, I'm going to scroll down so you can see where the changes occurred. You can see that it's pretty consistent. It's got 5 positions all the way till right here. Actually, take it back, it's reverse, I'm sorry. So the bottom, we started with 2 positions. We then went up to 6. For some reason, went back to 2. Went to 13 in here. And then now it's been steady at 5 all the way since then. So that kind of gives you that history reference I was talking about earlier. If I ever need to go back and open up one of those prior schedules just to see what's in there, they're not active anymore. I mean, it's an active schedule per se, but that week is no longer active. I can go through and click on that link and actually open it up and go refer to how many positions I had, or just view at this level and see what positions I had and what occurred. So you kind of have that history kind of going back for you. Other than that, you're done. The process is working. You've got like I said, you have 2 jobs. Same job, but you have 2 references to that job. You have one is a template down here, and then one up here that's actually the actual published schedule. And as I mentioned, if you come here week to week, you will see this effective period turn into a plus sign with the effective period being carried out to the end of the next week and so forth. And as I mentioned at the very beginning of the call, also the total hours will also increment. The total hours will also increment, letting you know that how many hours you've used this job. So 108 will become 216. After that, it'll come up to 324, and so forth, week to week to week, as long as I don't make any changes to it. Now, real quick, as a wrap up before we end our session today, one of the things I will tell you is you can always go back in here and make changes to the template. Like I said, just come back here to that red template that you see on the screen. Make sure it says template only as your status, and it's in red. When I click on it, click on that template, go in, make your changes, adjustments, remove positions, remove employees from shifts if you need to. The easiest thing to do is if you ever have to delete a, say for example, maybe because of the size of the job, we no longer require a cleaning supervisor on this job, you have an option to delete on that particular line. I can always delete it. Or maybe business is very good and we're going to increase our positions here. We're going to go back and change our positions. Maybe on Monday I need 5 now every day of the week. Just go back, click on assign on the template. When I go to the template, click on assign, a window will come up where now I can go through and essentially assign employees to those slots, like I talked about earlier. Or if I'm not even worried about employees, assigning employees, I just have to double click on that particular day in question. So like, for example, I double clicked on Monday here. I want to change that to 5. The simple is just go into that field, changing that number to the number of positions you need, coming back and hitting save changes, and the system will automatically update that number for you. Keep it in mind that template will take an effect late Friday evening. So I say by Friday end of business, before you leave the office or before you shut off your computer for the day, make sure that your templates are correct because the next week will be generated that evening. Alrighty, so let's wrap up our call today. Let me just go back over to the employee view real fast just to show you what I was talking about as far as the block calendar is concerned and in working jobs as well for those that may not be familiar with that. On working jobs, this week's webinars that I had on Tuesday and the one I'm having again on tomorrow, we'll discuss and detail the working jobs piece. But I'm going to go back to the employees here, and everyone on this phone call has access to seeing the employee record of the employees that work for them or within their area of responsibility. Once I go in here, I always pick on Edward. Edward's my example for everything I do here on our webinars. But when I go into the working job tab here, you'll notice that first off, the tab is labeled working job. But you will also see on the right-hand side here a listing of all the jobs that he is currently assigned to. Assigned being a key word. If I go and create a schedule for one of these jobs, then I can use Edward at that job. If Edward I'm looking for job 502-0001, and you notice it's not on the list here, it should be right here at the bottom. If it's not on the list, then that means I cannot use Edward on that schedule. Simple as that. So you can come in here, you can come in on the left-hand side. Everyone now has access to this section. We opened that up last week for everybody. But you can come in here now, look for that job you want to assign, click assign, and once it appears on the right-hand side here under assign jobs, make sure you hit save, and you can now actually save that work or save that new job, and Edward in this case, my employee, can now work that job both by clocking in and clocking out at that job site, but more importantly, as far as scheduling goes, you can now schedule him to that job. So that's just the little piece I want to show you real quick. If you want more detail on the working jobs, I urge you to attend my webinar tomorrow, and we'll go through this a little bit more detailed. Block calendar is the other tab, and the block calendar allows you now to come in here to add a new scenario in which that employee cannot work. So let's say Edward comes in and says, you know what, I'm going to have to be on medical leave for 2 weeks, and I won't be available every day between the 1st of February and let's say the 15th of February. So I can come in here and put in that date range, hit save, and the system will block Edward out of being able to be scheduled for that particular frame of time. So just keep that in mind. You have the ability to go in here and actually block out times. Now, the reverse doesn't work, and I want to bring that up. So if you already have Edward scheduled for that time frame, you cannot go back and the system will automatically remove him. You'll have to go back and remove him from the schedule. What this does, it just doesn't allow you to add him into any new jobs or new positions that you may need to schedule for. So that's the other part called block calendars. So those two things I just want to bring up for you so you can actually see what's actually dictating some of those things, some references you may have seen in the scheduling module. Now, if you go through here and for some reason one of the questions came in is what happens if I don't have a save button? Put in a help desk ticket. Let's talk about that because it might be the role that you're currently using. If you don't have a save button, that typically means that where you're at in the system, whatever you're trying to do, you don't have access to doing that, or that role you're currently using does not have access to doing so. So just put a help desk ticket for that, and we can address that accordingly. Alrighty, so I think we've gone through pretty much the whole scheduling module. I'm hoping that I answered all your questions and kind of hopefully get you back on the right track to create schedules to your benefit. But please reach out to us if there's any questions, concerns with that. Just put in a help desk ticket. We'll get back to you real quick to assist you with your scheduling questions. So with that, I just want to say once again, thank you for joining us. We do have the EPAY tips and changes sessions every Tuesday and Thursday. Those are at 2 p.m. Central. And check your weekly EPAY updates for upcoming webinar information. We'll have this class again probably out here in a couple weeks. Can't remember the exact date. We'll have this session one more time. What I also do, one of the questions that was out there is, when is the next class? What I actually do is all these are recorded, and they actually are being pinned up to YouTube. So anyone can go to anywhere. You can go to Starbucks if you want. You can go from your office, you can go from home, and actually watch any of our videos for our webinars. It's wide open. Those links are available in your EPAY update, and they're also available on the Gateway, our ISS intranet site. So a lot of means of where we have our documentations and our videos recorded and saved as well. So please utilize those methods of keeping up to date and getting your documentation as needed. So with that, I want to say thank you for joining us. It's been my pleasure joining you today, and just want to say have a great rest of your Wednesday, and we'll hopefully catch you on a webinar again here in the very near future. Thank you so much.